Good morning, everybody, and a huge welcome to Google Digital Garage this morning on this fine Tuesday. I hope you're well, and I hope you've had a good Monday so far. We're quite early in the week, but I hope everything's going in the way you'd like it to so far. My name is Glenn, and I am a trainer for Google's free skills training program, Google Digital Garage. So I'm an experienced digital skills trainer. I had to think about that for a second. Experienced digital skills trainer, and my background includes consultancy and management, digital marketing, really helping businesses identify ways to grow and to develop, and of course, try and keep up with the ever-changing trends that we see. The world of tech is just growing all of the time. So I think it's quite important we try and keep up and make sure that we're maximizing every opportunity that we've got to move ourselves forward and to improve. Okay, so I'm not on my own today. I am accompanied by the wonderful Annie, who you're going to see in the chat. So if you have a look underneath the picture or to the right, depending on what device it is that you're using, hopefully you've got a chat function that has opened up and you can see Annie in there. She's just said hello and she's got a blue spanner by the side of her name. So Annie is there to interact with you. So please do pop in and say hello. We can't see you. This is a live session. We can't see you. You can see me. So it'd be lovely if you could pop in, say hello, let us know you're there. Let us know why you're here today and what you're hoping to get out of the session. So pop in and say hello to Annie and myself, and I'll give you a shout out on screen as well if you do that. So I'll keep an eye on the chat too. So if you can't see the chat, then please do just log into your YouTube account and it should then pop up. And if you don't have a YouTube account, then you can create one very, very quickly indeed. One of the nice things about the presentation that you're going to see, there's a lot of nice things about it, but one of the nice things is that if you need to revisit it at any time, it will be available for you to do so for the next 24 hours. So if you've got a YouTube account and you're watching now, it will be in your history, which is one of the many features of YouTube. I love YouTube. So please do give that a try, because then if you need to revisit any areas as you start to think about building your engaging presentations, you can revisit this session in your YouTube history for the next 24 hours and pick up any areas that you'd like to revisit. So that's a pretty handy feature. So before we do actually get going, I'm just going to run through a couple of pieces of housekeeping to make sure we're as comfortable as we possibly can be. If you're having any difficulties with the picture or with the audio now, then please just refresh your browser. That should hopefully fix any of those issues up. As I mentioned, this is a live session, so just hitting that refresh button may well improve the quality anyway. So join the instant chat, put in your questions as we go. Annie's going to answer most of those for you as the session progresses. We do have a couple of pause for questions throughout the session too, where again, I can answer a couple of those live for you. So pop them in. Let us know what's on your mind as we work through the presentation today. Again, it's a great topic to be looking at, and I think really, really vital for so many people in so many ways now, whether we're presenting and thinking about doing some type of speech or presentation, whether we're doing what I'm doing now, whether you're presenting in a work environment, whatever it is that you're doing, honing those presentation skills is a really, really good and useful skill to develop. Now, we're running this Google Digital Garage webinar as part of a broader offering of courses. You probably signed up for this on the Google Digital Garage site. That's g.co/digital garage. So, Annie, yep, there you go. Annie put it in straight away. Please go back onto that site and sign up for as many of these sessions as you'd like. We've got a whole host of topics to help you and your business really to move forward. So sign up for as many of those, as many as times as you like, to get a good experience and from a broad range of trainers too. There's also some really good free courses on there. The building engaging presentations is all about us as individuals, kind of helping us to build our brand in some ways too. So think about the fundamentals of digital marketing as a really useful course. It's no cost. It's a 40-hour video learning course. And once you've passed that, you can download a certification that's endorsed, I think, by the Open University. So a really useful thing to have on your CV or on your LinkedIn profile. All right, so let's get going. Let's have a look at building engaging presentations, communicating our message, and engaging our audiences. That's the important bit. So what are we going to be covering for you this morning? We're going to be looking at, in the first section, how to craft our approach to presentations, how to prepare ourselves, how to get ready, be familiar with the uses of presentations to achieve a desired effect, because you definitely want a desired effect from your presentation. Then secondly, we're going to be looking at creating an effective presentation from scratch, all of the considerations that we have, piecing all of those together to give us the output that we want. And then we're going to learn and run over a few essential presentation skills so that we're confident and that we're feeling empowered to make our presentation when it comes up. Hello, so I can see this morning, Smart Internet Lab. Hello, my name is Anetta. Thank you so much for coming into the chat this morning, Anetta, and a jolly good morning to you as well. Thanks very much for getting involved. So hopefully we'll hear a little bit more from you throughout the session as well. Now, before we do get into the content, there are some free career certificates available from Google, so have a look. Go into gwo.gle/career search UK, as you can see on the screen. There are some job-ready skills, some job-ready courses that have been made available from Google there, including digital marketing, including data analysis, including project management. So some really key skills that essentially there are a lot of jobs going at the moment that need those skills without quite as many people as required in order to fulfill them. So if you have a look at those, have a look at UX design is also another one of those courses. If any of those fields really interest you, then do one of these courses, get yourself ahead and help get yourself a role, hopefully, into one of these areas by using a job ready skill. So that's gwo.gle/career search UK. All right, so I will mention that again later for anybody who's missed the link. But again, Annie has put those career certificate link into the chat for you. Okay, so let's go straight into it. Let's make you do a bit of thinking, I think, for a moment. So what's the most memorable presentation you've experienced? So that can be pretty much absolutely anything. Maybe you like TED Talks. Maybe you have had a really engaging work presentation. Maybe you've been and visited a show. Maybe you've gone to a conference. What's the most memorable presentation that you can remember? And start to think about what it was that appealed to you about that presentation. Now, we can also counter that. I think the other side of that is to think about presentations where we've just not watched the whole thing or we've moved away fairly quickly. What makes us do that? What are our preferences? So again, please do pop that into the chat. What's a great presentation and why? Was it was it a really strong presentation for you? And again, maybe think about why a presentation that you just didn't enjoy, what factors about it meant that you didn't enjoy it. I can see that Annie's put a great example into the chat. My most memorable was a lecturer who would hardly look at the class and would face the board. And so therefore I felt disengaged. Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to put you off too, because you want that engagement, you want that interaction, and you want that feeling that everybody's there in the same purpose with the same things in mind. So it could be a really engaging boss, a college lecturer, whatever it may be. So let's have a couple of examples of those in the chat while I move on, and I'll try and pick up on those in a moment. So why is it that we present? Now, presentations, if you kind of break it down a little bit, are used to support the story that the speaker is telling. And they might accompany the words that they're using with images, text, and maybe video and audio. And you'll see examples of that throughout this presentation as well. So, you know, we do have to make sure that we're presenting the right things in order to convey the right message. You know, we need to think about it. We need to then convey that in some form. Now, we do have short attention spans. It's worth bearing that in mind. The impact of things like social media and advertising means that our attention spans are a lot shorter, perhaps, than they might have been 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what we need to do is to build a presentation that's going to live on in the memory. Now, we're going to give you a demonstration of a presentation, very short, which I'm going to play for you in a moment, which is here. Now, this is Nilofer Merchant, and she's suggesting a small idea that might have a big impact on our life and health. We're going to play that in a moment. So it's really around the premise of if you have a one-to-one meeting, rather than perhaps just sitting around a table, sitting around a desk, you're going to go for a walk and let your ideas flow while you walk and talk. So that's a really, really interesting thing. Just bear in mind when you look at this, what you're going to take away from this presentation, and also think about how effective the speaker essentially has been in conveying their message. So I'm going to play that for you now, and we'll be back in a few moments.
What you're doing right now, at this very moment, is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week. It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking, and in the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
Okay, that's really interesting, isn't it? So again, just take that in for a moment, have an idea of what the concept means to you. I mean, I find that pretty, as someone who's worked in offices quite a lot, I find that quite compelling in terms of actually making really, really good use of time, getting some exercise by you doing it, and free flowing those ideas. So I think that's a pretty effective presentation. The speaker, I think, kind of knows their topic really, really well, and they know exactly what they want to convey through to the audience. But let me have your thoughts. Let us have your thoughts in the comments as well as we go through. So the question at the top is, what type of presentation is this? And that's important. We're just about to cover what types of presentations we might well be looking at. So bear that in mind. What type of presentation is that? What's the speaker asking you really to do there? Okay, now, I've mentioned about stories and storytelling. So stories really are the secret ingredient to a presentation. Stories are something that we've passed down from generation to generation over millennia. Before we had the internet and connectivity and TV and radio and all those other forms of communication, we had to just speak or write things down on whatever tablets of stone, paper, whatever it is that we could communicate these stories in, because we were then able to convey information generation to generation. So I think it's almost in our DNA that we really love stories. So your audience are going to love stories. Really worth bearing that in mind for your presentation. And of course, all stories have that key factor of a beginning, a middle, and an end. So a beginning where you really do set up what you're presenting, a middle where the audience is going to go on that journey of discovery with you, because we've set up speaking and we've set up presentations now we're starting to tell you the story in this very presentation. And an ending where you tie all the thoughts together and reveal any final insights for that final impact, and for your audience to take away something that hopefully they're going to mull over later and find even more depth in when they revisit and when they reflect. So there are different types of stories that you can have, and this is a good overview of the way that you could structure a presentation and the way that you can structure your story. So we've got origin, future vision, failure of success, or realization. So these are all the same thing, just positioned in slightly different ways in order to achieve a different impact with your audience. So you can position any story in this way through any of those 4 story types, depending on the impact you want to achieve. So for example, as an origin story, where I started. So I started my marketing business with a laptop in my garage, and now I've got 30 workspaces in 30 countries across the world. Cool. Okay. Positioning. Then if you have a look at, let's go to the failure of success. My first couple of attempts at starting my marketing business failed as I didn't have the right target market. I learned from my mistake and now have offices in 30 countries across the world. So a different emphasis on different points, a different emphasis on a mistake that was made along the way, something that I corrected, something that could help the audience to perhaps fulfill their dreams in a more productive way. And again, help the audience to learn from that story's mistake and think, okay, I'm not going to do that because it's already been outlined that is something that can happen. So you've got realization stories. It's all about solving a problem, of being stuck, and then having that inspiring kind of eureka moment. Yeah, I've got it, I've found it, I've got the answer. And of course, you've got the future vision in the middle there, which is the opposite, really, of the origin story. It paints a dream or a picture of what could be. So the future vision, my marketing business is growing, and my goal is to have offices in 30 countries worldwide. So it's a vision. It's kind of, this is what I'm looking to achieve. So the same story, the same underlying concept, just positioned in different ways for the audience. So a great way to think about how you might want to structure your own story too. Now, we're going to use different types of stories or different story types for different types of things. So on the screen, you can see 3 typical presentations that you might give at work and the types of stories you might want to tell in order to make these more interesting to your audience, because they might be reasonably dry topics, but you've still got to bring them to life. Now, the budget report, for example, you might use a success or a failure story here and focus on what you've learned and how you're going to move forward. So we're looking at the figures, we're telling a story with the figures. What did we do? It's almost like analytics in digital marketing in a way. It's kind of what happened in this month, what went right, what went not quite so right, and what can we do differently in the next budgeting or forecasting period to capitalize on the things that we did right. That could work. Then we've got a company update. So this could be helping people, especially maybe if you've got new starters in the audience, where you've come from and what you're building towards, so that again they've got that kind of vision, what they're working towards, what your goals are, so that everyone's working towards the same goal, get everyone on the same page. That could be good for a company update. And then an idea pitch. So I've got a good idea. This is something I think might help to improve the business. So this might be a vision story or what the future looks like if your idea works, or maybe even a realization story. I've been doing things this way for such and such a long time. And then someone gave me some inspiration and I thought, actually, I could do it a different way, be a lot more productive, do it a lot more economically, and perhaps do it a lot more efficiently as well. So think about how you want to position the information that you want to present and be really convincing and be really compelling for your audience. So again, start to think about your stories, start to think about why you're here in the presentations that you might be wanting to build and why, and perhaps how you can best make those stories appealing to your audience. That's the key. So what's the goal? We want to have a goal for a presentation. So this presentation, this module, is to help you to build some engaging presentations by thinking about all of the key facts to bear in mind, so that you bring it all together, you put them all together as part of that jigsaw, and at the end of that you produce something really compelling for your audience. Now, we don't want presentations that kind of just ramble on. We want to work out what the goal is. What do we want to achieve from the presentation? What do you want your participants to actually do at the end of the presentation? A good example of this is I used to have a boss who I might have had some ideas and some suggestions for in terms of improving the business. And he always used to say to me, Glenn, if you come to me with an idea and a pitch that is so compelling that I'd be silly to turn it down or to not strongly consider it, then I'm going to have to consider it, aren't I? It's almost like that making me an offer that I can't refuse. So think about it in that way. You want to bring all of the facts together to show someone or show the audience that you have an idea which is so compelling that why wouldn't they do it? Why wouldn't they try it? Why wouldn't they think about it? Why wouldn't they amend their thinking? Why wouldn't they be entertained by it? Why wouldn't they be educated by it? Think about what it is that you're trying to push for. Okay, so what do we want people to think? We want to structure our presentations really, really clearly and in a way that we can follow really, really easily. We don't want people having to work too hard. We want a nice, clear flow of information. So people attend, if you think about your audience, get into the mindset of your audience and get into your own mindset as to why you might have attended presentations previously. People attend presentations to obtain information. So you need to think about, as we've been covering quite comprehensively, how to influence our audience and the thoughts that you want them to think to take away the facts and the points that you're trying to make. So give them something really underlying and strong, impactful insights that I didn't know that. Wow, that's a really interesting perspective. Use all of your personality and your unique selling points in order to be compelling in your presentation. And then what do we want people to feel? Now, why is that important? Because what we want is to build a rapport with our audience. That's really, really important. If you think about Annie's example in the chat, her lecturer was not building a rapport with the audience by not engaging with them or looking at them or making eye contact or perhaps involving them in the presentation. So you need a rapport that kind of builds to like an emotional connection. You think, oh yeah, this person is nice. This person is giving something of themselves. This person's giving something which is important to me that I want to take away. It can be the warmth. Humor can lighten the tone of a subject if it's a strong topic, and also has that impact of perhaps making the audience relax a little bit more and be open to your message. Now, you can personalize the narrative also so that your audiences can empathize with you, perhaps. This is something that they can say, oh, crikey, okay, yeah, I can see the impact that's had on you as a speaker and why you're sharing your personal story with us. So it's all about building a connection. Build that strong connection with your audience, and you're halfway there, because people want to feel like they're included. People want to feel like they're special and that they're part of the thing that's going on, because that can also make a dry topic. If it is like a finance presentation, it can make it more engaging because you're bringing a story and a narrative into it that makes it really, really interesting. As we've mentioned as well, if you're doing these things online like we are, then one of the things that I've already been able to do is say, hello, Smart Internet Lab, good to have you here. It's good to acknowledge that even though I can't see you, I'm aware that you're there. So I'm engaging with you, and hopefully I'm connecting with you in a slightly different way. But whatever, a connection is a strong thing to bring into a presentation. Now, what's the one thing that you want your audience to take away? Great question. You need a central goal. You need the thing that's that huge seed that you've planted. There might be one thing from the whole presentation that you want people to take away, or perhaps you want a bit from each section. So we've got 3 sections to this presentation. So our goal kind of is for you to have a focus point for section 1, a focus point for section 2, a focus point for section 3, and then an overall message that you take away from the presentation. So refer back to the goals. And obviously avoid telling people lots of things they don't need to know. Keep focused, keep to the point, and keep consistent. The TED Talk that we saw demonstrated earlier on, it was very clear what the presenter wanted us to take away, that we needed to be more active in our day-to-day lives. That's what I take away from that, and finding different ways, out of the box ways, in order to do that. So rather sitting in an office and having a chat across a table, we go for a walk around the lake or in the green grounds outside, and we integrate the two. We have that freedom, we've got the air around us, as long as it's not raining really hard, that sort of thing, and we can share ideas and we have a really productive time. All right. So we want to think about the structure and flow that we were talking about as well. Everything we've been discussing, how does all of that come together? It gives your presentation structure and flow when you integrate. What do you want people to think, to feel? How do you want them to feel? What are the goals of your presentation? So when you know the goals, you can then work back from that. The screen that you can see now, I think, is an excellent demonstration of how to put your presentation together. So we've got the background, what we're trying to achieve there, the problem that we're trying to solve, because we love to solve problems. And most people, in any sense, whether they're going into a search engine or they're going to learn something, they've got a problem that they'd like a solution for, or something they'd like to consider in a new way. And you've got a conclusion, that thing that you leave people with so that they go away and reflect. In order to achieve those things, in between, you can see at the bottom there, we need to research, we need to plan, and we need to design. So researching your presentation, identify the most relevant points. So then when the planning of your presentation, think about what you can do in terms of building that story that we were talking about. Maybe you also want to put in something that kind of shocks or surprises your audience, keeps that attention span there and present in the moment. Or maybe bring up a problem and throughout the presentation start to share the solution that you think is applicable to that. Now, The design, then we want to make sure we've designed it. We want to make sure that we're bringing our ideas to life with an adequate way to represent that. That could be intricate, or that could be very, very minimal. Again, it depends on how you feel your audience is best going to receive the message that you're trying to present. Okay, we want to tell a story for our audience. So set aside, this is perhaps a little exercise for you, set aside some time over the next few days, if you're thinking about building a presentation, to practice telling somebody a story about something that inspires you. Set a timer for a few minutes, and then, or even, do it yourself. If you haven't got anyone to present to immediately, you could do this into a video camera. You could do it on your phone and record yourself. Tell yourself a story and think, does that encapsulate all of the key points we saw in that presentation? Am I building a story? Am I building up to a point? And am I being impactful? Now, maybe you could do that on the origin, the future vision, the success or failure, or the realization story types that we saw earlier in the presentation. So again, if you need to revisit any of those, remember that this is going to be live. This link that you're on now can remain live for the next 24 hours once this presentation is finished, where you can revisit any of those sections. But give it a practice. Have a go. Tell a story to your audience. The audience can be you if you can be objective. Does it fulfill you telling a story and getting people from that beginning through the middle and into the end? Okay, we're going to pause for that first set of questions. Let's just have a look to see what's going on. I can see Annie's been reasonably busy in the chat, and I can't see any particular questions. Oh, here we go. Okay, so how to control your nerves so it appears natural. Thank you, Annetta, from Smart Internet Lab. Right, what I'm going to do, because this is covered later on in the presentation to some degree, some of the things that you can do in order to make yourself feel more comfortable, I'm going to put that question on hold and come back to it later on in the presentation. So bear with me, because we've got a whole section on really how to best present yourself and to look at some of the difficulties. And I do talk about it in a bit more detail. So I'm going to carry on then and move into section 2, where we're going to be looking at how we can build effective presentations. Now, we want to do our research and structure our thoughts, as we already said. And now we want to explore the tools that can help us to do it in an effective way. So this is the thing, that whole thing of being intricate, or whether we just want a minimalist approach, it depends on the audience that you've got and the setting that you have, the message that you're trying to convey. Think about, again, the story, the main goal, what you're trying to achieve, and how that would best be represented. And then the tools and the technology that are available to you at the time. So again, are you presenting maybe in a theatre setting? Are you presenting in a community centre setting? Are you presenting in an office setting? What have you got, and what can you best utilise to help you make the impact that you need? Because there might be a projector in the room, there might be a laptop that you can project your screen or onto a screen as well. Look at what's around you, what you're going to use, and be very, very clear about what your audience is likely to see. Those are things that are really, really important to take into consideration. And also, having done a reasonable amount of face-to-face presentations lately, remember to take the right cables with you as well. If it's an HDMI projector, make sure you've got an HDMI cable. Make sure that you're able to fulfill the job that you want to fulfill in the first place. Now, it's not all about slides. This is obviously run on a slideshow, and we are using a slide deck in order to help us convey our message. But we don't necessarily need to do that, and it is an active decision that you want to make. There are some other tools that are available, so let's have a look at those to see, and maybe again, based on some of the examples that you can see on the screen there, I mean, I've used all of those in some respects at some time or another. So Mural is a really, really good tool that can help you build some pretty good visuals. Canva is an excellent tool. I'm sure a few of us might be aware of Canva in terms of building great graphics that perhaps, again, can help accompany the main message that's being given in the presentation. Sly.do or Sly.do, depending on how you want to pronounce that, is an excellent tool with interactivity. That, very briefly, is where you can build a Slido slide into your overall presentation. When you reach it, you can then, through the power of mobile phones or connected devices, get your audience to interact directly with you, and everything they type in based on the questions presented will come up on the screen. That's a really good way to get some interactivity and to get some really good insights very, very quickly, very effective as well. Or you might want none. You might want no accompaniment whatsoever. Think about maybe if you're familiar with TED Talks that we mentioned before, they don't necessarily really have much accompaniment at all. It's all about the speaker and the strength of their story, and of course the practice that they've done in order to get that story right for the duration of their speech. So think about the aids that you need, or do you need any at all, in order to accompany the main message, the main goal of your presentation. Okay, so bear that in mind, because again, it's different, I think, depending on what you want to do, the size of the venue. Are you doing this all online? So again, that could be quite helpful, like we're doing here, to have slides. But again, there's no mandatory way to do that. So choose your tool. Is it going to be your computer, your tablet, your mobile phone? How are we actually going to structure what we're doing and make sure we've got the right software or the right tools available to us? So we're going to choose that presentation tool. Now, there are a number of quite popular tools. We've got Google Slides, which we're going to look at in a moment. There's PowerPoint from Microsoft, which is very similar to Google Slides. We've got a tool called Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I. And we've got Keynote. If you're an Apple user, you may well be familiar with that. It's a very similar tool in terms of like the Microsoft PowerPoint and the Google Slides equivalents. So there are lots of ways. And again, you don't necessarily with Google Slides or with Keynote need to spend any additional money if budget is a concern to you. Now, Google Slides is really, really good. It's really collaborative. The presentations are in the cloud. So if you're building that with other users and other collaborators, then you can all go into the same document at the same time and update it at the same time. So it gives you real-time collaboration between editors, and it gives you lots of different options for sharing the presentations as well. It's really, really good. Also, there's a revision history, which is really, really handy, which allows you to access any version of the presentation and keeps a log of who's made which edits and when. So you really essentially just don't lose any information. It takes away that need to keep pressing the save button every time you do something. And also quite handy with Google Slides is that you can convert the Google Slide format into other different formats like PowerPoint or PDF. So again, how you want to present, if you want to do handouts of the slides as well, there's a quick and easy way to do that. So that's pretty handy. Now with Google Slides, again, it's something which I use quite often. You can customize how your presentation looks, and you can build up a thing called themes. You can choose from some pre-designed themes to give all your slides the same background, so you can give them a consistent look. So that's pretty handy as well. You can include different slide types. You've got title slides. You can do section breaks, content slides that have headings and different types of content. So the formatting is controlled by the theme so that you can get on really with the main content whilst knowing that it's all going to look good and it's all going to flow in a consistent way. So again, something to bear in mind in terms of usability and efficiency and usefulness. Google Slides is a great tool, part of the Workspace suite. And if you've got a Gmail account, you can access via those 9 dots that you get up onto the right-hand side of your Google account. You can access a number of tools that are no cost to use. So custom themes, you can just see a little running video. There's no sound needed for this one on the screen, where you can build custom themes. They're a little bit more advanced. They can incorporate or help you to incorporate your own colors or brand logos and apply them to every slide in the presentation. Because again, I mentioned before about the branding element and making sure that we are strong personal brands or business brands. So you can incorporate your brand and put that on very, very quickly as well and let it run through the entire presentation. You want to follow those brand guidelines so that you're building that brand identity so that people recognize you for you. Now, you can make your presentation, I've sort of touched on this, look really fancy if you want to, but it doesn't mean to say that you should. What you don't want to do is distract or detract from the speaker and from the main messages that you want to convey. I think that's very, very key. So the navigation for Google Slides is very, very easy as well. Very similar in concept to what you might have used in Microsoft Word or Excel, etc. You've got that toolbar, that navigation part at the top, which helps you to add text boxes. You can insert images, shapes, or lines, again, to help guide your audience through the visuals that you've got. You can change slide backgrounds. You can change the themes. It's all very easy in order to negotiate, and these things are built to be as intuitive as they possibly can. And then you've got the top of a present button, really handy as well. Present, off we go. You can build speaker notes into your presentations as well, which is really handy as a point of reference. So there's a lot of ways for you to capture all of the information that you need to capture at any given time. Now, we want to make our title impactful. Again, it's the title which essentially gets us hooked. We want a goal to the presentation. So how can you build the goal of the presentation into a few words that is going to get people's attention and get people, it needs to be relevant, and you want to grab people's attention very quickly. The title of the presentation could be listed in a conference program, an online directory. It could be in the minute notes for the meeting you're about to run. So you want to excite people and intrigue them so that they're looking forward. A bit of anticipation can't go amiss at all, can it? So they're looking forward to your presentation. That's going to be really important as well. I'm really looking forward to that presentation at 10:30 today, the one that we're on, because it's going to really help me to build some impactful presentations, and it might get me a promotion in the long run. You never know. Now, we can get excited about things and start to build up some of the impacts and some of the outcomes in our mind. Now, we do want to use, I think this is quite key, as little text as possible. Too much text can be a little daunting for people. And also, again, maybe that's detracting from the message that the speaker is speaking. If people are having to focus on a large body of text, it's going to distract their attention away, and then possibly not going to take in both sides of the message at the same time. So we want to keep it easy to digest. The example on the right is pretty good. It's got the main key of that slide, which is welcoming people, and then 3 points, 3 bullet pointed areas that people can focus on. So minimal approach, minimal information. So also think about perhaps that some of your audience might not find reading the audience the easiest thing to do. So you want to appeal to everyone and be as inclusive as you can. So as long as you're able to convey the message in the most appropriate way, then maybe too much reading is something that could detract. But again, that's up to you and the purpose of your presentation. Now, we want to make sure that we are being considerate, as it says, of the number of slides. So a general rule of thumb, I think, or something you can work to as a guide if you want to, is maybe like no more than a slide per minute. That could be quite good. So if it's a 60-minute presentation, then maybe no more than 60 slides. But also, again, if you've got slides that you need to explain in depth, you will understand that you might need to spend slightly less time on each of the slides. So you can start to think, how do I structure the amount of slides that I've got into the time that I've got available to give me enough time to cover the key points of the content? That's important. And we want to keep our bullet points concise. So we don't, as we've mentioned, we want to use the bullet points to reinforce what's being said ultimately. So keep them concise, not too much of a kind of book to those. Think about your font, make sure it's accessible and recognizable from the back. Sometimes sometimes those pretty fonts are really nice, but again, on a practical basis, are they going to be readable from the back of the room, and are they going to have people struggling to understand what's going on? If so, then you don't want to again detract from the main point of the presentation by making it hard to access. Vary your content backwards and forwards. Maybe you want to use some graphics here and there, incorporate a video, as we did earlier on in this one, so that people can just have a variation of things that they're seeing at any given point. And change your pace, because sometimes you might need to speak really quickly to make a point and to build over a concept. But sometimes you just might want to speak a bit more slowly to make a really important point, to slow things down, and for people to really digest the information and the point that's being made. So use it almost like that's almost a theatrical, dramatic element, but it's really key in terms of you don't want to go really, really quickly past the key point of your presentation. You want people to take it in, to digest it, give them a bit of time to do that. A couple of seconds on a dramatic pause is going often to work very, very well indeed. Okie dokie. So we've got running an online presentation just like we're doing now. This is a live session, as I've noticed. They're called remote sessions. They're called virtual sessions. Now we need to think in some ways even more about our audience at this point, because I can't see your body language. I'm not making eye contact with you apart from looking at the camera. So we don't really know how you're getting on. Now we want to potentially perhaps think about, are we going to be sharing a screen? The size of an audience is also something to bear in mind as well. Now, are we going to have the video connection for our participants so that everyone can see that, or maybe that they can even interact via the live audience participation? So we're using YouTube at the moment, but maybe you're using a different tool entirely, like Zoom or Google Meet. Are you going to get people, are you allowing people to interject or to put their hand up so they can come on screen and make a point? Think about the eventualities and what people might want to do. We also want to make sure that the tools that we're using are going to be reasonably easy for a broader, wider audience to use. There's no point using a really complicated tool if there's going to be setup time involved in that, or you're going to be getting an influx of messages saying, I can't connect properly. So think about, again, what's going to be distracting. Have you got some tech help with you, or a moderator like we've got today with the wonderful Annie in the chat? Or have you got someone that people can contact in a techie situation because they can't get the picture, they can't get the audio? So again, think about what might potentially be good for you, what might potentially put you off, and making the interactive elements of your presentation as easy to access as is possible. And you can also think about the cost elements too. So, a virtual session is in essence, sending out a couple of emails with invitations can be quite cheap to set up. So even if you can't set up a big room or get a conference center or afford to hire a hall in your community center or the local library, however it is that you were thinking about doing it, then maybe the virtual offering is a good thing to consider. Now, the reason that we have Annie in the chat and why we have moderators for our presentations is because if that chat got really, really, really busy, I don't want to be, as a presenter, distracted from what I'm trying to do, the main message that I'm trying to convey with you. So you might well need to consider, if I'm going to get a lot of questions, I've got to have someone here probably helping out with those questions. So again, think about what's likely, what you envisage the presentation, the goals of the presentation. Is it likely, if it's a controversial topic or a really busy topic or a new topic, that people are going to have tons and tons of questions that they want answers to, because you might not be able to keep up with all of those questions. We've had this on webinars before where there have been so many questions, it's just like a constant scroll, like a social media feed. I, as a presenter, I've got no chance of keeping up with all of those questions, and you do want to answer as many as you possibly can. Also, one thing to remember is often if you are presenting and you're using kind of man-in-the-middle software, that there might be a delay between what you're saying and the presentation itself, and your audience actually hearing what you're saying. Just make sure that you're aware of what's going on so that everything ties up and everything is looking as great as it can, and of course sounding as great as it can. Now, okay, we are going to pause for questions. And again, Annetta, I have not forgotten you. I have not forgotten you based on your question from earlier on about how to up your confidence. So we're going to hit that in the next section coming up right now. I can't see any more. Oh, there we go. I mean, Annie's starting to answer as well. To avoid nerves of looking at notes, practice lots until you feel confident. Yeah, that's a really good response, Annie. And also perhaps just to understand the key points of each slide or each section so that you're constantly reminding yourself and working towards them. This is also a good time to mention we do have a feedback form, so please go to gwo.gle/Digital Garage Feedback. Let us know your thoughts on the presentation and how you think we can improve in the future. And I'll come back to that again a little bit later. So this is the bit. This is Annetta. This is for you, this next section. We need techniques, we need to boost our presentation skills, and we want to build our confidence. So we've thought about the structure, but we need to think about what we're doing. So I'm moving my arms around quite a bit. We've got gestures, we've got facial expressions, we've got the voice and the tone. And so we need to bring all of these things into play. One of the best ways to do that is to practice in the mirror. That's quite an obvious, hopefully an obvious thing to suggest, or to record yourself and play it back. Now, I play back my presentations, not because I love myself, but because actually I want to make sure that if I've got any particular words that I repeat a lot of times, or if I do a particular gesture or pull a funny face, that I can minimize that for the next one. Revision, learn from yourself, do less of what doesn't work and do more of what does work. So review yourself, get used to what you sound like on camera, get used to what you look like on camera, move past that and focus on the content. You know, good confident speakers don't have some sort of natural gift particularly. It's a skill that can be learned. That's the key here. It's the skill that can be learned. It's taking that deep breath, and it's making sure that you're feeling prepared with the content. I think more than anything else, in terms of my confidence, if I know what I'm talking about, I'm going to do it quite well, rather than thinking, oh, what is that I'm supposed to say now? What is that? You want to be prepared. You've got to practice, and you need to do as much practice as to when you can then walk away and just think, I've got that down. I know what I'm saying. I know the structure. I know the story that I'm telling. So preparation seriously is the key. So let's answer this in a little bit more detail for you as well. We do need to adapt to our audience and how many people it is that we are presenting to. We want to, as it's there, we want to have conversations. But actually, whether you're presenting in some ways to 100 people or to one person, you're still having a conversation with one or with 100, but you're still having a conversation with hundreds of singular people. Now, when you're presenting online, numbers can be a lot bigger. Now, I do tend to think and feel like I'm just delivering to a single person and talking to them directly, because I want to engage with you, but I've got no visual clues that I can adapt to by doing that. So I can just give you the best general overview of the points I'm trying to make in the friendliest and most positive way. That is clearly going to be a helpful approach. Now, think about your audience participation. We love audience participation because, again, it is really nice. And where we do a mixture of face-to-face deliveries and also these virtual deliveries, it's a great balance, actually. But we still want to interact whatever way. We want to interact. Sometimes in large groups, you might want to give a show of hands, ask a question, hands up, left hand for this, right hand for that. Stand up if you like a particular group. Icebreakers, things that kind of help to break the ice with people and make them feel comfortable with you. If you've got a medium group, then maybe you can ask questions directly to individuals. Where are you from? Have you used the Google products we're talking about before? Have you got any experience in the type of thing that we're talking about? Now, if it's a one-to-one group, then maybe that's more of a conversation. You could ask that individual to sort of carry out the tasks that you've been talking about, or to reflect, or to give you a response to some of the key points that you've been making, so that you build a nice discussion. So ask questions like we've been doing. Think about this, think about that. How does that impact you? What do you think? Because we want you to think, and we want to get some of your feedback. That's really, really important too. So, we want to handle questions. We want to be honest. We want to, as we've said, find an adequate way to deal with our questions, which again, so we've got the moderator in the chat as ever, and it makes me more at ease with what it is I'm trying to present. So that's a really, really key thing. But also listen to your audience. I can see, and I haven't been able to keep up totally with Smart Internet Lab and Aneta. I can see that she's making good use of Annie in the chat as well, and has got some really good, engaged, relevant questions. And that's all we can really ask for, some good, engaged, relevant questions. So keep them coming. And again, hopefully I'm answering your question now, Aneta, in terms of how you do that confidence thing. There is one key thing we're going to come up with a bit later on, which hopefully is how we dissipate energy and prepare ourselves just before we do that presentation. Now, we want content to avoid content overload. So we want to tailor the story so it's relevant to the audience. Again, with anything, we want to make sure that the people in the room are getting the story that they've turned up and that they are actually expecting. Now, maybe again, in terms of memorizing your content and feeling confident with the flow, each slide or each section has 3 key points that you need to achieve throughout that slide or section. Then also take a pause every now and again. Take a breath. Okay, cool, we're here. Where am I? Even a split second when your brain is engaged is going to help you to look at the points that you've made, to help you make a summary, and to help you move into the next section with good focus, with an expectation of what's coming up. A lot of this is actually going to be contained in the voice. Mariah Carey, the voice is a powerful weapon, I think, is essentially what we can summarize there. So, but also her tone and her scales, she really makes and conveys different messages based on the tone that she's using. She's not talking in a monotone, she's keeping it interesting, active, based on the points that she's trying to make in her songs. So we can do the same by looking at our volume. Now, you make sure that your voice is as loud as it can be, that's appropriate to the group size. Maybe you need a microphone if it's a massive hall. Use your voice as a tool. Speak quietly to get people to focus every now and again and to come, oh, why is he quieting down a little bit? Or speak loudly in order to reach the back of the room or to make a particular point. Now, adapt your style. You can change your style throughout a presentation to match the experience level of the group. Based on the content that's being offered. Make your tone variable. Again, depending on the points you're trying to make, the impacts that you're trying to have. An inverted tone at the end of the sentence indicates a question. So you can use your voice very, very strongly to, so what do you think about that? So again, it's using those tones in an appropriate way. And a pace. We want a steady speed. We want to remember to pause. We want to breathe. That's important too. You don't want to be doing it so that you're at the end of it, you're going and taking those deep breaths, just as you would do as conversationally as you possibly can. Don't rush through the content. Delivering as a calm and a well-paced way, that will help you appear confident too, even if presenting is not necessarily your first art. So you can use these tips and tricks and tools really in order to make sure that you're the one in charge here. You're the one delivering the content with the story to tell, and that you're essentially handling your attendees and your audience in a way that is going to give them the most benefit and the most value from the session that you're presenting. Body language is a massive thing a massive thing to take into account as well. Your gestures that you make, the stance that you've got, are you open and wide, or are you a little bit constricted? Think about again what is going to present great body language, and the facial expressions. Strong, positive body language. We want to use that as an essential tool to build credibility, to help you express your emotions, and remembering what we said before, to help us to really connect with our listeners. So does that mean that we're going to be happy or sad? Is our story happy or sad? Are we going to want to come across for dramatic effect, nervous or confident? Do we want to come across as honest or untrustworthy? We want to come across as honest, passion. People want to see the authenticity in your eyes, and hear it in your speech, because you can always demonstrate a negative emotion to accentuate a more positive one, perhaps on the next slide or in the next point that you're explaining. Adopt different emotions to help your audience understand the power of emotions and the differences between them as well. It's a great tool to use to really convey a message really, really strongly, taking people on that journey with good, strong, dramatic effect. Now, Anessa, this one is really what I was going to get to. Power poses. You might underestimate the power of this, but actually they're brilliant. Maybe you just need to put yourself off into the mind of someone strong that you admire. So why not do the Wonder Woman, the kind of superhero pose? I'm a superhero, I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm not fazed at all by what I'm doing, and adopt that mindset really. When I do a presentation, if I'm feeling a bit nervous beforehand, I just tend to jump around the room a little bit, just to dissipate and to expend and to spend some of that excess energy that I've got, so that I can focus on the job in hand. Again, maybe we want to talk and we want to maybe shout a little bit, or we want to bounce around, whatever it is that you feel is actually going to work for you. Be that performer. You are performing to a degree. You're authentically performing for your audience. So you want to think about your stance. Is it an open stance? Again, looking confident. You will see this a lot when you look at presenters on stage. They're open and they're welcoming in their stance. Think about the movement. Do you walk side to side on the stage constantly? Do you stand still? Do you fiddle? Again, that's when you watch yourself back. When you practice, you'll start to understand the things you might want to minimize and the things that you might want to work on or improve. And then make sure that you are connecting. You want your eye contacts. Fix your gaze, move your gaze around the room to all areas of the room to show that all areas of the room that you're presenting to are actually involved, actively involved in the presentation. And there it is as well. I honestly couldn't say anything more important within this presentation than practice, practice, practice. It does. It's a skill that you can learn. So listen to what you say. Do you say too much? Do you use words too many times? I've probably said okay too many times during this presentation. I've sort of just noticed it in my head. So those are things that I can then tend to eradicate with my own feedback there, with someone else's feedback, that I can improve on the next presentation, so as to not bog people down with words that aren't required. So review yourself, be as objective as you can, or maybe get a trusted friend or family member to watch you as well and just say, yeah, that was good, apart from, and what people that are going to be constructive with you. You can build your way up to looking really professional, really confident, and really, really credible. Now, if something does go wrong or something happens, then bring yourself back into the process and the confidence, and you pick up from where you left off. Sometimes things go wrong. It's how you recover from that. It's what you do next. It's how you fix that problem that's more important than anything else. Okay, so in summary, hopefully this has been really useful for you today in terms of thinking, I can do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to practice, and I'm going to be good. We need to adapt to our audience. Our audience are always key. Our audience drive everything that we're trying to achieve, because our messages are for an audience. We want to think about our voice and how we regulate that and the tones we use. We want to think about our body language and our open or our closed stances and what best is going to appeal to our audience and make them feel comfortable. And then we want to practice our performance until we are so comfortable with ourselves that we're just concentrating on the content. So for the final pause for questions now, let's just have a quick look. And there is one that's coming. Let's have a look. To control the audience when they start to engage too much and take over. Yeah, it does happen. It can happen when you get very enthusiastic audience members. Now, what you can do is actually, I think, as Annie has already said, is to make that person integral to the presentation and shine the spotlight on them via questions and kind of build them in a little bit as well, so that they feel part of it. But you can also actually just say, as long as you're saying politely and professionally, okay, just in terms of time and making sure we can get the biggest benefit, the most benefit from what we're trying to achieve today, let's have a chat maybe afterwards. Let's come back and let me answer a couple of your questions later on. I really appreciate it. Love it. Store up any more of those questions that you've got. And I just need to talk to that person over there because I can see they've got something to add as well. So you can, as long as you're polite and professional, you can manage. You kind of have to manage your audience, because sometimes people do get a little bit carried away. That's fine. You don't, it's not about being rude about it, and it's not like it's an inconvenience because you love the interaction. It's just knowing how much time you've got available to you. Like at the moment, I've got 2 minutes left. Keep an eye on the time, and make sure that you can just, if there are other conversations you can have and you've got 5-10 minutes after the presentation, just say, come and see me afterwards and we'll pick up on a couple of your points. But thank you very much. And always thank people, because you are grateful for that interaction. It's much better than getting a stony silence, that's for sure. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Now, with your next steps, I'm just going to say that one word, that's practice. Do that. Go also perhaps go onto the Google Digital Garage site. Think about the fundamentals of digital marketing to help your overall marketing experience. Think about the brand building. So use things like writing for social media to build up your appreciation of messaging, how people appreciate messages, how people focus on them, and attention spans. You'll learn a lot about attention spans in our modules and how to make sure you're being appealing at any given time, which is very important when you're building a presentation as well. Now, remember those career certificates that we mentioned before, GWO.GLE/CareerSetUK. build your skills, look for those job ready skills. And again, maybe that can help you to elevate your career. So just now, as we are coming to an end, I do want to say thank you very much for your time and attention and your interaction with us today. Fantastic, like utterly fantastic. A massive thank you to Annie for her work in the chat and for answering the questions that have been coming through. So leave us your feedback. We'd love to know how we can improve. That's goo.gle/digital garage feedback. If you're on social media, hashtag it digital garage with anything you found useful so that other people may again perhaps decide to sign up and watch some of this really, really useful content. Remember the Google Digital Garage site, g.co/digital garage, for a wide, broad breadth of topics and subjects to help you and your business grow. So without further ado, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed. It has been an utter pleasure to be with you today, and I hope to see you again in the future on another Google Digital Garage live session. See you soon. Bye-bye.